Good afternoon to you. Welcome to the show. Today it's the second part of an interesting discussion that started last week with Doug Ryder. Just to recap, Doug Ryder, professional cyclist in his own right, took part in the Olympics in '96 in Atlanta, where amateur and professional cycling got together, competing against the likes of Lance Armstrong. He was the captain of the South African team for many years, worked in the IT game, the Cape Argus Cycle Tour winner, and now he started his own professional cycling team. Been in the game for many years. They're in the Top Flight arrangement, sponsored by NTT. It is the rebranding of the Data professional cycling team. I'm very excited to have him. Please stay on the line. My name's Alex McPhail, and this is High Performance Teams. Doug, how's it going there today?
Yeah, better than the last time. I don't have any people working in my little home here that I've in the Hague in the Netherlands. So yeah, thank goodness nobody's going to cut my power.
Great, that's nice to hear. I'm glad you now settled down. Thank you once again for the second opportunity, and we can pick up the pace where we left off. I've made a lot of notes about our first conversation, and it's given me some more questions too. But firstly, just your experience. I was recently overhead in Amsterdam in Europe, moving airplanes around. You've been in South Africa with the COVID. Now you're in the Netherlands. My take on it that is quite relaxed there. What's your experience of this pandemic living in Europe?
I mean, it is relaxed in the Netherlands. I mean, they had some 6,000 odd deaths, I think, through the pandemic, which was, obviously very sad, but it wasn't, didn't really hit them, I guess, as it could have and it has some other countries. But they are pretty relaxed. Bars and restaurants and things are open, and public places are open, parks and beaches and all that kind of stuff. And there's a lot more movement happening every day. And then the borders now between the Netherlands and other European countries are also starting to open. So, as of the 15th of June, many countries were open. So it's actually, it's opening up, and but people are still cautious. Public transport still wear face masks, but otherwise, generally in public, no need for that. But a bit more relaxed than South Africa at present.
And do you feel odd there? Like, my sense is that you've come from like isolation to very strict to then open, and do you feel a bit awkward about it, or do you feel like, what are we talking about again? Pandemic, and carry on almost life as normal?
Well, I feel short. The tallest nation in the world. I don't know what they eat. Milk,
sure,
but or whatever. But I feel short. But it's no. It's you do feel like a foreigner, I suppose, and a tourist a little bit. It's relocating is never an easy thing, but it does feel like the pandemic was is kind of far away from all the crazy lockdown stuff that we were part of. For those 2 months, I guess, when I was there, obviously those 2 months in South Africa. So it is much more relaxed.
Well, that's good. At least we can then start moving forward. And the short thing. I mean, if you look at those air hostesses on KLM, I mean, I don't think any of them are less than 6'1". That's where it kind of starts and then goes upwards from there. Doug, it's great to chat with you. It's a fascination of mine, is this professional cycling. It's something I watched a lot of cycling as a kid, as a youth, and it's where I started. And when we're going to get to Beyond a Reach, that's the time I was watching Miguel Indurain 5 years in a row, the Tour winner. But for a long time, I haven't really watched it diligently, but I'm fascinated by the teamwork. And as we touched on last time, the incremental gains process, marginal improvements. But the specifics about teamwork, so maybe it's a good place to start is, in the team, maybe you can describe the different roles there are on let's talk about the tour, that race. And on any given stage, there's about 10, 11, 12 riders, and the different roles of the different riders in that team on a stage.
So thanks. I mean, the one thing that's amazing about cycling is that it's, the routes, change every year. You don't race around the same Formula One circuit or play on the same tennis courts or football stadiums, etc. The route changes every single year. Sure, there's similar things that happen each year, certain climbs that could be similar, but the approach to the climbs could be different. So in October, when they announced the Tour de France route, we already look at our 27, 28, 29 riders on our roster, look at the route and really cut it down, 50% to about 13 riders potentially that we could think that could meet the needs of the race, because ultimately we need to bring our best ammunition, to the proper gunfight, right? And look at the course and look at that first, and then we decide what our strategy is going to be, and then what's the best possible team. But a cycling team cycling is a bit like cricket, actually. You need each other. You can't make a century if the guy on the other side of the pitch doesn't, stay there with you. Cycling is exactly that. It's a bunch of brilliant individuals who are experts in their own functions that come together under a simple strategy, a connected, united strategy, and then try and do amazing things and make magic happen. And they are all completely reliant on each other. So that's how we see things, and that's why if you look at there's domestiques, so riders that work as a servant of others. I mean, it's not the greatest thing to be called a domestique and that you're someone else's servant and you help to serve others. But and then you've got the expert climbers, you've got the rouleurs, the ones that can go everywhere and anywhere and up and down and are good at everything and great at not really particularly great at anything, but you need those. And then, of course, the pure sprinters and then the general classification riders and all of that, because there's so many competitions within the competition. As you know, there's the points jersey, young riders jersey, King of the Mountains jersey, and then, of course, the yellow jersey. So it depends what your strategy is. That's the beauty about cycling. You can go into the race and win something and not win it overall.
Okay. All right. Well, let me dive in there a little bit. So that's great. Where I liken the cycling team to flying, I've given some talks about it where I try and marry the two pictures over. And as an international airline pilot myself, I find myself in those roles of domestique from time to time. So I've been flying for 20 years, but there's a day where I have to come in and operate in the B team, as it were, the second part or the relief crew. And even though I'm fully qualified to fly the airplane, my role today is to make sure that the primary crew are ready and rested for the approach and landing at the other side, 15, 16 hours of flying later. So even though that I'm fully qualified with 20 years experience, I come on duty that day in a subservient role willingly, and someone does it for me the next day. This is just a give and take. Is it the same in the team where you can move around up and down, or is it just a base of experience and you build up and build up and build up and then you no longer do these subservient roles? Because the way I liken it is you could be the best cyclist in your country or even the region in the world, but serve as a number 2 in a pro cycling team.
Absolutely. I mean, if you think, we have, the Tour Down Under this year, we had Giacomo Nizzolo and Ryan Gibbons, both pure sprinters, both trying to do the same thing. And, they support each other depending on, how they're feeling and what the terrain, at the finish potentially would suit either one or the other. And then the other one will ride in support of that person. So, I mean, if it's Ryan Gibbons' day, Giacomo Nizzolo will be there with him till 200 meters to go and give him the best opportunity to win and not, sit at the back of the peloton. That's the thing. It's when the plan and the strategy comes together and the team buys into it, then everyone has a role and a function within that. And sometimes you can be Top Gun, or you can be, you can be the guy without the Ray-Bans, taking the wind and eating the bugs off your teeth at 60 km an hour, on the front of the peloton. So absolutely, I mean, it is a give and take.
Okay, that's great. It's nice to know that my suspicions were correct. But now, okay, so then within that again, you obviously have strategies. So how many different strategies would you lay out on the day, knowing that, strategy A is primary, B is the alternate, and maybe there's a C? Are there many, or is it one and you just deal with hiccups on the way?
No, we try and do a maximum of 2. A cycling race is so complicated that if you give the riders 8 or 9 riders, depending, too much to focus on, they kind of forget what is really, pertinent. We do have earpieces and radio communication that we can talk to the riders, from the team cars, and they can communicate back to us. So massive amounts of technology in it, but we often try and have one plan, but there are things that do happen, and then we would focus on a plan B and switch over, but that has to be done immediately, and it has to get everyone's commitment immediately without any debate. Because cycling, it might be a 6-hour race, but there are moments in the sport where those decisions literally need to be made instantaneously, and it's not like a conversation. It's like, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to roll it out, and everybody needs to buy into it. Because even if it's a bad idea,
you have to go.
If everybody does it, then it can often turn out good if you believe in each other and you have the power and the strength to do it. So absolutely, but we look at, I think Chris Froome and Team Ineos, they focus on limiting their losses every single day, and leveraging certain stages. In our team, we're a spontaneous team, that likes to give every rider an opportunity to be successful. So we look at the 21 stages of the Tour de France and see what are the opportunities to win as many stages in those 21 days, leveraging the skills of each and every rider that we have in the team. And so we plan stages for each rider down to the detail. And then the riders know about that beforehand, and all the staff know. So when we go into the Tour de France, like, this day is your day. And then the whole team combines and works to it. So a lot of planning, a lot of preparation, a lot of route wrecking. You know, we don't fly into the blue yonder hoping that, you know, things will be okay. There's a lot of prep that goes into it.
Okay, so then this brings us back to the point you mentioned last time, which I wanted to get deeper into. So this 2016 tour with Cavendish taking the stage win, you said that was it, day one, that was your tour. Was that because when you looked at the route plan, you thought that's the best opportunity and the only most likely opportunity, so give it your all? How do you approach the rest of it? I mean, you've obviously got more days to go, and you choose the best 3, 4, 5, 8. And on this day, like, let's go back to 2016. You planned it, executed it, it went well, you won it. So what does the celebration, the review look like, and how does tomorrow look back in the office?
Yeah, we didn't really care about tomorrow. You know, we were in the yellow jersey. No, I mean, it was an amazing opportunity. You know, in our second Tour de France, day one, Cavendish had never worn the yellow jersey in the Tour de France in 10 years. So this was not something that was common. I mean, he'd won many stages, but this was a massive opportunity for him, a massive opportunity for us as a team, and of course, you know, exposure for our sponsors and for the charity Quebecer. But you know, the next day, after that day, we'd so focused on that day that we hadn't actually thought about the next day, because we were all in. You know, we wanted to it doesn't matter if we didn't care about if we were tired the next day or whatever. It was like, if we wear the yellow jersey, we'll be on such a high, we'll ride that momentum. And the next day was pretty hard, because we actually lost the jersey the next day to Peter Sagan, I think. But he, you know, and it went up a climb, and Cav's not the best climber, and it was a real tough stage. And we were hoping Edvald Boasson Hagen would be a person that could potentially take over the yellow jersey. So we always had a plan in mind, of course. But and then once we'd had that half a glass of champagne, we focused hard on that. And then sadly, Edvald crashed on that first stage in the lead out in the sprint, and so he was a bit banged up and sore. So we just tried our best, and then it didn't work out. But we still ended up winning 4 stages in 7 days, and we still had a plan. For the rest of the tour, but we were literally 100% focused on that day one, because we knew the importance of it.
Okay, great. It's nice to get that going. Also, to kick it off like that, and get those milestones, winning the yellow jersey first time, etc., the sponsors and all that. I want to come to Quebecer a bit later in the chat, but you mentioned some things like go, no go, and a lot of things seem to cross over with this the similarity of flying. And another thing I want to just understand is strategy versus tactics. So again, the strategy for an international airline flight is to go on a long way with a big crew. Sometimes it's 18 crew members. The plan is from here to, let's talk about Joburg to New York. It's a long flight. You got to plan out and look at the weather, your route, etc. You know what's coming, and you give the best possible decision with the fuel that you need for this flight, bearing in mind some contingencies and the weather, etc. Along the way, something may happen. The thunderstorm is way bigger, or it's now become a bigger sort of squall line, and you can't go around it how you thought you would. Now you've got a 100-mile detour, or you may have a sick passenger or crew member, or you may have something technical. And those things come on board now, and your strategy has to be parked for a moment, and you have to flip over into tactics. And there's a whole different set of standard operating procedures for aircrew when you go off your normals, now you're on non-normals. And now you run this tactics, but you got to then flip it back to strategy once you've dealt with that issue. So the strategy stays because there's no filling stations on the way to New York. You need to make sure that this your original plan can still work, bearing in mind the safety factor. Is there something that aligns there with you, that you've got the main strategy, you deal with a little hiccup and you come back to strategy? Or is it kind of a go down this road and then if it need a change, you just change?
No, absolutely. I mean, it's the similarities are absolutely there. I mean, if we've got a goal to, like in our first win of the year, this year, Tour Down Under, Giacomo Nizzolo, was quite a hilly stage with a big mountain mid race, and we just said, look, he's our go-to guy. We feel he's in the best shape to win the stage. If he gets dropped on the climb, we don't leave not one person in the front peloton. Like Ryan could have potentially stayed. He climbs quite well as a sprinter, and we brought the whole team back, and they just stayed with Giacomo, got him over the climb. They were a couple of minutes behind, and they chased like hell. to get to the finish. Ryan was sitting on a little bit, to save himself for the finish, and the team just rode straight through the peloton, caught the bunch, with a couple of Ks to go, and then it was back to strategy. So that was an event that we needed to get back on track. And then, once we were back in the peloton, it was like the sports directors, speak to the riders and they say, okay, we're in the game. We have an opportunity to win, back on strategy, back on the original plan.
Right.
And then they executed and he won, which was brilliant. And when you put a plan together and you have those hiccups along the way, but the whole team commits to it, faultlessly, selfishly, with absolute passion and commitment, where the riders that were bringing him back, like Scott Sunderland, our young group of guys, they were lying on the floor, so tickets after that stage, because they'd gone above and beyond their capability, which they thought was their maximum. And they went above and beyond because they just knew they needed to get back on strategy and back on track.
Okay.
And then when you win, it's just the elation and the unity that creates, and the trust and belief in the management, in themselves, is, you become a team that is on such a high, you walk, an inch taller, which is cool.
It's good to be in the Netherlands an inch taller.
No, I need about.
All right. Okay. So another couple of things you've mentioned is this idea of changing, and I immediately my mind goes to Formula One again with this multi-21, where the team gives a quick code and that's it. This is the new plan, because it's, as you said, the whole team is to bind quickly and it's one quick command. And the relationship again with flying, there's another similarity here. In the takeoff situation, there's a position along the takeoff run where something may happen, and there's a few critical things that can happen that will stop you. But if you reach a certain speed, it's much safer for everyone to get airborne. Even though you might have one engine on fire, you still get airborne. So there's that very critical thing, and that's the decision speed. And when when something happens up until that decision speed, your decision was made yesterday. In fact, 20 years ago when you learned to fly, that decision speed, when you hit it, you go. If you haven't hit it, you stop. And so there's no debate, no discussion. It's stop or continue. And it sounds like there's a similar thing again where you tell the guys, what is that kind of a call? Is it strategy B? Is it go? Is it blue lemons? What do you say? Is there some little code word, or how do you get that information across quickly?
Yeah, I mean, it's different to different sports directors and different riders. You've also got multiple languages, in a team. And of course, English is our standard language of the team, because you have to kind of formalize that and make that known and understood, I guess. But, with a race, you've got a team car that could be sometimes a kilometer behind the race, watching it on TV and a delayed signal, because we've got TVs in all of our cars where we watch the racing live, and we get radio tour communication from the organizers and information from the staff, and a team car that's 30 minutes in front of the race, giving the road temperature, wind direction, any crazy things that are happening, like speed bumps or crazy sharp corners or anything that's on the road, just to put the riders in the right position to give them the best chance to be successful. But if it comes down to the road captain, so every team, every day, we'd have a road captain for that stage, and with the team trying to be connected and ride near each other, they will ultimately, if there's lack of communication or lack of correspondence between the team car and the riders, then that road captain makes that call. And that's based on, it's not necessarily the best rider on the day. It's the rider that's seen these situations before, been involved in cycling, has the experience, because you don't buy experience. In any sport or in any business, it's earned through blood, sweat, and tears. And I think that's when the call gets made, and then everybody commits. So it usually sometimes happens actually, on the road together in the gutter, at 50k an hour.
Oh, that's nice. That's really nice. Oh wow, there's so many similarities, even more similarities than I thought, and it's fascinating. Just while we're talking about Tour de France stuff, there's some questions coming through. Please keep your questions coming. From Jordan, thank you, asking about what's the future of the 2020 tour. Do you know anything? Any updates?
No, August 29th we start in Nice, so the route hasn't changed. I mean, the route changed for the Giro d'Italia, the route changed for the Vuelta Espana, but the Tour de France is as is, but it's just 2 months later. But August 29th is go day. We just hope that the early races that we're riding, as we start end of July into August, that there's no incidents of, the pandemic in any part of cycling, because, that potentially could create some fear, uncertainty and doubt and derail a few things. But at this point in time, August 29th is go day for Tour de France 2020.
Okay, that's good to hear. And Peter Emery is asking, with all the different races that are now overlapping this season, how are you going to split out the squad to achieve the targets for NTT Pro Cycling?
Yeah, it's crazy time, man. We've got 130 race days in 100 physical days. So we're racing a double to a triple program.
Wow.
And the riders are going to be incredibly busy. There are not many airlines flying, so it's going to be a lot of driving, back to the old school days where riders used to get in cars and drive to races. So they haven't had that luxury for a while. But it's going to be tough, the logistics, and we plan riders into blocks. So those that go into certain countries and certain areas and focus on a block of racing, and then pull them out into the grand tours, which are going to be crazy because the Giro d'Italia overlaps the Vuelta Espana. So it's going to be some riders are going Tour de France and Giro d'Italia back to back, like Peter Sagan.
Wow.
Which is crazy because they're 2 weeks apart, where it was normally a month between the two. So to recover from that and move on is going to be super tough. So, but riders are rested and ready, working hard. And our riders are still doing 28-hour weeks, even when they were in full lockdown. So there's massive commitment.
Well, just on that topic, because this is what I wanted to get to last time as well. Programs like Zwick and all these different tech IT things, there's been a lot of debate about it, and some people saying we're absolutely against it, but then having tried it, it seems to work, and maybe you don't need to get up at 4 a.m. and go hit those roads outside of Johannesburg anymore. What is your thoughts on how have you used this modern tech and these new systems to get the best out of extra training?
So we've always embraced technology in the sport because we feel, that technology is an enabler for you to do things, work on your weaknesses, manage your time better, I guess overcome bad weather conditions to stay, on it. And so, Zwift has been an amazing platform. And and now that through this pandemic and this crazy time, we've connected with a fan base and a group of cyclists around the world on a more intimate and personal way that, watching it on TV is pretty two-dimensional, whereas, on a platform like that is quite engaging. People can ask questions and get responses. And so, we've really enjoyed it. We're looking forward to the virtual Tour de France that's happening in July with all the teams competing. So that'll be shown live on Supersport. And so, I think there is going to be virtual racing like there's happened in other sports. There's Formula One esports. There's there's other things like that. And I think that the beauty about cycling is that the engine sits inside, and it's not through your fingers or through an engine between your legs, unless you're on an e-bike. Yeah. But none of those. But anyway, so not for us. But mechanical doping, as they call it these days. Gosh, so much going on. But I see it's here to stay. I mean, it's an amazing way to connect with people all around the world. And so, it's definitely a big part of cycling. And I think cycling is one of those sports that can go virtual and give your partners and our sponsors just that extra bit of exposure and connect with a wider audience.
Okay, and on that point now, this sort of this Zwick platform, I mean, I don't want to sponsor any particular brand. I know there's a few different platforms, but we mentioned Zwick earlier. So you can have quite a sophisticated piece of equipment on your, you could ride a very, very close to being the real bike. Obviously, you don't have the environmental effects, but so all the data that comes with it, the power meters and stuff that we touched on last time. Again, now the similarity with flying, I wonder where you draw any parallels with you. So when I sit in my cockpit, there's a lot of data that comes at me. Data like nautical miles, data like knots, data like kilograms, data like PSI. But that data isn't useful unless it's information. So I have to sometimes look at that data and assimilate that into information to make it meaningful, because 180 nautical miles from a beacon where I'm navigating to doesn't tell me when I'm going to get there, and it doesn't tell me how much fuel I'll have when I get there. I need to do a bit of a calculation. And so the data that's meaningful is presented as information. Is there something that comes in that resonates with you on that with cycling?
Completely. I mean, there are also many, many data points in cycling that we can focus on. But I mean, in the end, we've also got temperature of the road, the wind speed, altitude, meters gained, and power output, of your teammate, and speed in relation to that. So there's many bits of information that you can focus on. But ultimately what a sports director does in the team car is he's got 3 screens in front of him, and he's got a TV channel, and he's looking at all these things: the next corner, the next vantage point, the next, where the wind is blowing. He gets the wind speed, real time, and etc. and where the riders need to move up. And then he knows which riders are in the race, obviously. And then he decides, he takes all this information, and then he only gives the information that he feels is necessary for the riders at that time. Because if you gave it to everybody at all the time and all the information, they'll just pull the earpieces out of their ears and say, thanks very much, I'm not going to listen to you. Because it's just too much information. So that's where the experience comes in. And it's also knowing the riders, because some riders want to know more than others. Some information you want to give to them when they're in a breakaway, et cetera, et cetera. But, it's not like Formula One where they pretty much show you everything.
Yeah.
This is slightly more intimate and personal and relevant to the situation, I guess. So.
I just think about
there's a lot of information.
The Formula One where Kimi Räikkönen says, "Shut up! I know what I'm doing." Can't pull his headset out there. But okay, so we
take his helmet off.
Yeah. Okay, so in terms of the tour, I would like to know. Let's talk about a tour, the team that's on tour, the Tour de France. What is a typical day on tour day versus non-tour day for a pro rider in the team?
No, I mean, Tour de France any tour is a long day. The one thing about cycling is that you don't all stay in the same hotels, and you don't all stay, at the same distance from the start or the finish.
Are you talking about your own team or the different teams within the team?
You're different teams.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, no. So within the team, you stay together, but your logistics for the day are different depending on what happens. So we plan in advance, and we've got our Alcatel-Lucent Enterprise Rainbow groups that we focus on and tell the riders and give them the logistics. But they would get up normally at around 8:30. The riders go and have breakfast at 9, get in the team bus at 10, drive an hour to the start, and hour to an hour and a half to the start, get to the start at 11:30 stage, usually starts 12:30 or 1. And they'd on the bus they would get the final race strategy and have a final team meeting. Then they would go out, have press interviews, go do a formal sign on, and then then come back to the bus, fuel up with all their food that they need for the day, and then move on to the start line. Then race 5 to 6 hours, finish at 5:36 when TV is prime time. And then some, if they need to go to dope control, will have to then go back to the team bus, get changed into a fresh set of clothing, and then go to the dope control or to the podium. Depending how long that takes, the rest of his teammates will be in the team bus. They'll shower and change, and there'll be food prepared for them by the chef and the bus driver. Then they'll eat immediately as soon as they can. Straight after their shower, they'll eat, and then the bus will drive an hour to 2 hours, potentially that depends how far it is, to the next hotel. And and then at 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock, let's say, they arrive at the next team hotel. All their rooms are prepared by the staff already, so all their luggage is in their rooms and all prepared. They've got a massage schedule. They go for hour massages each, and then they come down and have dinner at about sometimes 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. Get to bed by 11, and up at 8, and so it moves. I mean, the day is incredibly long, incredibly hard. During that time, in each day, we weigh the riders 3 times a day. So we weigh them in the morning as they get up, as they get on the team bus, after breakfast, and then as they finish the stage, so we can see their weight loss during a stage. Some lose 5 to 10% of their body mass in a stage of 200 kilometers. So then post that the build process happens. And we take, urine samples from them, once a day to see their acidity and alkalinity in their urine, to see if they're hydrated enough. So that's on a stage race.
Yeah.
Then on a single day event, it's slightly easier, because often what happens straight after the race, the riders get shuttled off to airports and they fly home, even at 11, 12 o'clock at night.
Okay.
And so we get them out as soon as possible back home, so that they can have
maximum
only a
time.
couple of hours off the next day, and then prepare again for the next event. So the days are very long.
Yeah, it sounds complex. I mean, it sounds like the way you describe it is I'm not trying to belittle it, but I mean, it's like the finely tuned racehorse that you're just trying to, make it the best possible, weighing 3 times a day, etc. 5 to 10% weight loss in a stage. That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, the people aren't the heaviest to begin with. To lose 4, 5, 6 kilograms in a day of riding, that's insane.
Yeah. So we have smart scales and smart watches, and we monitor their sleep patterns. We monitor how long they sleep for, and what their heart rate and average heart rate is over an evening or a night's rest, and then we do weigh them as often as we can, so that we can just keep topping them up and keep the racehorse finely tuned as possible for as long as possible, and then of course hope that there's no abrasions or injuries or something like that need to get dealt with. But in a Grand Tour, the chances of you crashing once per rider is, if you crash only once in a Grand Tour per rider, you've done well. Okay. Often you crash, 2 to 3 times. And then it's just that injury management, because that takes energy. And so we have a doctor on the tour as well that looks after the riders as an insurance policy, but they're usually very busy.
Sure. And you mentioned in that talk that I listened to a while ago you gave regarding one of those prominent chefs who joined the team. Do you still have that, a prominent chef, someone that's really eager and passionate and wants to be part of a pro cycling team? How does this sort of the meals and the chef thing work nowadays?
No, sadly, that chef became so famous that we like not good enough for him anymore. No, I'm joking. He's a passionate person who loves our team so much, and we're hoping to bring him back to the Tour de France this year, if he can come. But he wants to make Boerewors rolls on the Champs-Élysées, at the end of the Tour de France this year, like we did in 2015. But yes, we get a lot of people wanting to join our team. Lots of incredible human beings. That are incredibly talented, that want to be a part of our team for sure.
Okay, that's great. Now I want to just jump into your role on a tour day when the stage is on. What, as the owner, the principal of the team, what is a typical day for you?
Yeah, so I get up really early normally. I mean, my nights are short because I'm often going to bed really late, and I get up early to exercise and go for a run. It's not possible to ride during a race like the Tour de France. There's just so many people on the roads and too many things can go wrong. So I usually run with a doctor or a physio or something. We go for a run early in the morning at 6 o'clock in the morning, and then have a breakfast, connect with the sports directors and the performance manager, understand what if anybody had a bad night's sleep, or just to go over the strategy. Then I go in a team car to the start of the race. I don't go on the team bus with the riders. I go in a team car to the start of the race, and then I meet and greet all of our partners and customers that have come out that day, tell them the team story, show them through the technology and the infrastructure, introduce them to a few riders, and do so like a proper PR, marketing and partner interaction job, relationship building job, and then I go on the team bus. So when the race starts, I end up on the team bus. I do some work, catch up on stuff, because we've got races and riders riding in other parts. So just keep the whole system working. I go on the bus to the finish, and then I often go and meet with some media people, some SBS from Australia or NBC from the Americas or whatever. Do some interviews, talk about stuff depending on how we're doing in the race. And then spend some time with partners, and then wait for the race to finish. Hopefully we do well, and then I stand by the podium and take the flowers of the riders and the champagne. Normally, sometimes, hopefully, it happens less frequently as you would hope and like. But and then go and have dinner with the team, connect with them, and often do partner functions and present to customers, etc. in the evening. So for me it's a very long day. And it's all around partner interaction and I guess fan engagement. The
way you describe now, immediately I think this sounds like a business day for you. This is the real time where all the stuff that you build up till when the tour starts is behind the scenes to sort of build the energy. But once you're there, it's almost like it's show day for you to display your team. And this is a real business day, like an expo.
And I'm shattered. I mean, after that month of being on the road, it's crazy for me. I mean, I average 4 to 6 hours sleep a night maximum. And then on the rest days, the 2 rest days of the Tour de France, I have meetings from 7 in the morning till 7 at night, meeting with rider agents, sporting managers, potential partners, existing and future, etc. So it's I don't even get time to go. I mean, I'd love to go out and ride with the riders, because they also ride on rest days about 2 to 3 hours, and I'd love to go with them, but normally I just can't. It's just a crazy time. But that is only one Tour de France a year, and it's the biggest event, and so we are incredibly busy, which is fun, and it takes energy, but it's energizing just as well.
And the Tour de France is the reason for the team's existence. That's why you wanted to bring an African team to the Tour de France. But obviously there's more events throughout the year. But does everything build around the Tour de France? Is that the primary reason for your existence still?
Well, I mean, everybody, the funny thing is when you're a South African rider or a South African team, it's like, oh, have you done the Tour de France? When people ask you and you're like, no, but you said you're a professional team. So I said, yes. So you haven't done the Tour de France? No. Okay. So that's the reference point,
Yeah.
and so it is the big dream. And there'd never been a South African registered team, in the Tour de France before us. And I didn't want to just look cool in Lycra as a team. We wanted to make history, do something that was significant. And we continue to do that. So, those are the things that motivate us and motivate me particularly. So, but some people think that I don't work. I only work 21 days in July. And I have the best job ever because I follow the sun. I leave South Africa as the winter's coming and I go to to France in July when it's 35 degrees and everybody's like, shit, your life really sucks. But, our team, races 286 days a year in 25 countries on 3 continents.
Sure.
From January to October, we book 990 aeroplane tickets a year. We have 3.5 tons of nutrition, 200, bicycles, 250 sets of carbon wheels, 40,000 water bottles. I mean, it's a logistical feat with 20 odd vehicles, 2 buses, 2 trucks, 1 kitchen truck, 1 freezer truck, 1 small truck, 17 cars. No, I mean, it's
That's incredible.
It's a monster.
That's incredible. Well, 286 race days a year. So this year it's 130 race days and 100 physical days. So it's compressed, but it's compressed in a funny way, in a double up kind of a way. That's amazing. Well, you mentioned looking good on Lycra, which is also a comment that came out of another interview. You said encouraging people, chamois time is cycling time. So just expand on that a little bit because I want to get in and lead this into the discussion about Quebec as well. Getting people involved, getting them in cycling. Why is chamois time considered good time if you want to get into cycling? Why did you say that?
Yeah, I know. Time in the saddle is always good, and I think LSD, long, slow distance, is always a good thing. And then, of course, we always joke as cyclists because, cycling has an incredible coffee culture.
Yeah.
I'm sure in your industry it's the same.
Yeah.
We love coffee. More is better, as Jens Voigt always used to say. Like, how many espressos is enough?
Yeah.
You can never have enough. But we talk about sitting at coffee shops in your chamois and spending that extra hour at the coffee shop, and that's chamois time, which is counted as riding time potentially. I did 4 hours today, but you only did 3 hours on the bike and an hour at the coffee shop. But I was in my chamois.
Yeah.
So it's just getting yourself used to those conditions or into that environment. But it's a bit of a joke. It's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek thing.
But I see there's value there too. I think the way you sort of encourage the young people wanting to get into cycling new in the sport is that in the same way as you want to learn anything new, it's spending time with people that have the experience and just the talk and the kind of things they'll talk about, the tips, some tips and tricks that will allow you to learn and grow. So that's what I took out of that conversation. But let's bring this into Quebec. So the goal was to provide bicycles to Africa, and the Africans generally are good at long distance running, and you saw that as an opportunity for endurance cycling too. So how's that going? How's that relationship with the MTN, with the Quebec, and what are the results? Is anything showing yet?
I mean, absolutely. When we started this team, and we believed in the African potential in endurance sports, which is there. I mean, cycling is an incredibly technical sport. It goes from the communication to the tactics to, even to try and ride an echelon. I mean, you try and explain to people how to ride an echelon. Which side the wind's coming from, how much space do you leave, the dangers of that, the overlapping of wheels, what not to do, the etiquette in it. I mean, cycling is an incredibly technical and complicated sport. When we started with African cycling, we started on mountain biking, because you go from here to there, don't hit a tree, go as hard as you can. If you explode, okay, you'll improve next time. And then, so mountain biking is an individual sport, you against the elements, you against yourself, you against the clock, you against others, but ultimately it's skill and it's easier to get into cycling if you start on a mountain bike, because you get those skills and you do amazing things. And then team sports like road cycling, it has that extra tactical layer on top of it. But how have we done? If you look at, I was actually with my wife the other day talking about this. 6 years down the line, we had this African dream. We had 17 riders from the African continent in our first team in 2013. And 6 years later, do I think we could have been on the podium? Did I hope that we could be on the podium with an African rider in a Grand Tour? And the answer is absolutely yes. Did I believe that it was possible? Absolutely yes. Have we hit that target? No, sadly. And maybe the first row of riders that we looked at, or that put their hands up, weren't the best and weren't ultimately good enough, potentially. And we need to still do a bigger job in that. And that's, I think, the reason why we're still racing to try and raise as many funds as we can for Quebec, because the more people that end up on bicycles, the bigger pool of talent we can draw from. And if we still are the inspiration and the aspiration to join as a cycling team and get people to think and realize that the bicycle is not just a tool to get you from here to school, clinic, friend, whatever, but you can become a professional and earn a living, then maybe we can mobilize not only this continent, but also create heroes on bikes. And we're still on that dream. I'd love a child that starts on a Quebec bicycle to end up in the World Tour of Cycling. I mean, that's the cradle to the Holy Grail story. Then I can rest in peace. And so we hope to inspire, raise enough funds, and keep the charity being as relevant as it actually ultimately is and should be for our continent, which is in desperate need of independence, freedom, mobility, entrepreneurs.
It's almost like a bicycle can almost enable you to have a business kind of thing. You put a cart on it and be transport or something. You can just get further.
Enterprises, completely. I mean, we're doing that right now in Kurt Mariko. We're creating some amazing, multi-purpose bicycles that are incredible. I mean, they've got a thing in the Netherlands called the Buck Fits, which is
lovely.
Like a big thing in front of a bicycle where you can put kids in, you can put groceries, garden stuff. And, they've perfected it here. And I mean, that would be like gold in South Africa.
I saw the same thing. I was in London a couple of years ago on a trip, and I saw this basket type thing. And there was another one where there was you got your bicycle, but you got this long bench, like 4 kids can sit back to back to back on. And I thought, I went to look at this thing. This thing comes from Holland. That makes sense, because that's the cycling mecca of the world, just about. Yeah, it's amazing. And I thought the same thing. Imagine this back in South Africa, how useful this would be as a business. This would be, transport for people, transport for goods. It was, I had the same thoughts, exactly.
The challenge that we have in South Africa, and of course in most countries in Africa, is that we're not a flat country. I mean, we just have one extra level of complexity, I guess, because of just our undulation and terrain. But and also we also have some not so safe roads to be traveling on. But okay, we could dive deep into the weeds of that. Just one quick last question on the Tour de France stuff. You guys keep your questions coming if you've got more. But so the relationship started this year with Bjarne Riis, or as we mentioned earlier, tour winner, ending Miguel Indurain's run of 5 in a row, and obviously a big name in cycling too. He's been a team principal from other teams as well. What is the relationship between how he fits in as the manager and you as the principal? How do you interplay, bounce off each other, or work together, or separately? What are those two roles, and how do they play together? It's totally complementary. I needed a team manager that could take over on the performance side of the team and be hands-on that. For me to look after the team's future and its sustainability and manage all the partners, it's almost impossible to manage a 100-man staff person team, and the performance side of things, setting the strategies and doing all that kind of stuff. So I set the overall strategy, and then Bjarne breaks it down per race, with the individuals and the goals, the objectives, and works with his team. And so under him are, the performance team, the sports directors, the mechanics, the swannies, the carers, the doctors, and he runs ultimately the performance side of the team and takes ownership and responsibility of the training, the results, through his smart team of people, I guess. So it's absolutely complementary. He can't survive without me, and vice versa. And having someone with his experience that's worked with the best riders in the world, Contador, Sagan, the Schlecks, Cancellara, Mick Rogers, the list goes on. He's done amazing things. He's run one of the best teams in the world. And I think that experience helps the riders. The riders trust him. And I mean, that's important. Trust is critical. And so when he puts plans together, they believe in it, they buy into it. And it's shown this year. We won 7 races in the first 3 months of this year.
Oh, amazing.
And so that change and that trust and that creating unity, one team, no teams within the team, that connected space has been incredible.
Oh, that's nice. Okay, so things that you put into place this year, already bearing fruit, and with a constrained year rolling ahead, I wish you all the best for that too. Okay, the road captain you mentioned earlier, I just wanted to understand quickly on that as well. It sounded like it was a dynamic thing on the day, so there isn't a team captain amongst the riders. It just depends on who's more suited for the stage. Was that how you explained it?
Yes, if you think you've got the Spring Classics, the Ardennes Classics, the Grand Tours, the shorter stage races, cycling, the monuments, cycling has many different, layers to it. And I think you look at the expert and the person that takes a leadership role in those events that can be trusted and relied on and be there quite deep into the race that can make final decisions and take that responsibility on. So yes, there's a road captain that's different, per race, per function, I guess, depending on what our objective is, for that race. So,
is it for the whole race? Of course,
not everybody's a leader. Not everybody's a leader, sure. As you know. I mean, and so, but it literally is based on the type of racing that we're doing, like Spring Classics or Ardennes Classics, because they're all slightly different in their layup.
But is it per stage or per race?
So it'll be per race. So we would have but even in the Tour de France, you'd have a road captain for the flat stages, and you'd have a road captain for the mountain stages that would make those decisions. So. Yeah, I mean, because we often go into a race with a dual strategy to go for the general classification and win stages. And so on the flat stages, like last year, we'd had a Bernie Eisel, that would be the road captain on the flat stages because he's in the Mark Cavendish group. And then you would have, one of the climbers like a Roman Kreuziger would look after Ben O'Connor, Louis Meintjes, on a mountain stage and be the one that they would go to if there was doubt around a tactic or what was needed. So.
Okay. All right, and one more technical question on that, on the tour stuff. So you've got a lieutenant who's now helping out, and so what was the other term you mentioned for the lieutenant's name? So they're working hard and they're sitting there, a domestique. They're sitting to just deliver the goods for somebody else. But how do you know when that lieutenant is now ready to take on the sort of the leadership role? I mean, are there signs that come through? Is it like in animal nature where the person then challenges at the right time and you realize, okay, we need to either split these two, promote this person, or do they just find their own way out in another team? How do you see that relationship changing?
Yeah, I mean, it can evolve in teams, but I mean, it's like in any business. Some people do get overlooked and don't get what they want, but it is about a trusting relationship and understanding the individual. And I think we do a really good job in that. We just don't have people that are in an overall that fulfill a function. They are human beings that we are close to as individuals. And I think that's where those individuals do put their hands up. It depends on how outspoken they are in the team meetings. And if the sports directors look and go, wow, you're saying the right things, you're getting the floor, people are listening to you, and they respect you and trust you because, trust and respect is earned through the commitment and the effort on the road and not by saying it. And so, it comes in time. But in cycling, it's funny. And I think it's a bit like flying. We have the co-pilot or the second pilot that sits behind and the leader and the person who takes charge obviously sits in the front. And it's the same in cycling. If you see the team buses coming into the parkade of a race and you look at you look at the rider that sits behind the bus driver and then the one that sits next to him, in the two front seats, those are the leaders of the team.
Okay.
And then as you go further down the back of the bus, you get to the domestiques and the rouleurs and those riders that it's not them. The leaders are the ones that sit in the front of the bus. And when you start to move forward in a team bus, you are...
Is this something that just happens or is this a planned thing?
No, it happens. Like when the younger riders on a team, new riders that join a team, when they get onto the team bus, they wait for the senior riders to sit down and find their place. Okay. And then do they sit down.
All right.
So and that shows leadership, it shows intent. Okay. And it's kind of a funny, it's an
unspoken rule.
Yeah. And then when a rider leaves the race, so let's say, a rider leaves the race of a Tour de France for whatever reason, no other rider will sit in his chair.
It's like those the one or two of those numbers, like in ice hockey, Wayne Gretzky, the number gets retired when he leaves. I watched a great documentary on teamwork recently. I don't know if you're watching much Netflix with all your moving, but that Michael Jordan documentary, Last Dance. Have you seen it?
I saw it, yeah.
It's amazing. Talking about numbers. Some questions coming through. Peter's asking, how have you found the switch from the Cervelo bicycles to BMC? Do you provide any feedback to BMC in terms of what tweaks to the bicycles there may be?
No, we do a lot. Cervelo, we were with us for 4 years. That was an amazing, brand, amazing organization. Super happy. I mean, all bikes at that level are incredibly good. I must say, with the BMC, that's one of the most balanced bikes I've ever ridden. So it's not twitchy. It's incredibly responsive for downhills, for climbs, for undulating roads, etc. I mean, I'm riding their road machine, so we use the Team machine and the Time machine on the as NTT Pro Cycling. So those two brands, and I'm riding the road machine, which is not a gravel bike, but it's slightly wider tires, more comfortable, and more versatile. Great for South African roads for sure. And they're incredibly balanced and beautiful bicycles. So yeah, I absolutely love riding BMC, but all bikes at this level are incredibly good.
That's nice. One question that I wanted to understand now. So again, taking it back into the cockpit, there's days when you can just feel that things are working out, and as a pilot, the instrumentation is very sophisticated, but you can feel, like particularly on final approach, when you're settling yourself in, you're flying manually now, even a big Airbus, I can tell some days when it's going really well, and this is not every day, but it's going really well. I can feel that I'm in sync with this machine, and even before my vertical speed indicator reacts, I know that there's a bit of a sync coming, and then I see it, and I can adjust for it before it happens, and those kind of things. What do you notice in the team when you know the team's in sync today? I know you're less involved on the race day because you're doing the business of the team, but as a rider yourself, or watching it, seeing it in front of you happen, what do you notice in the team when that kind of same being in sync with your equipment and your team is on display?
Yeah, when you see that cohesion and the riders connecting together without even having to talk to each other, and they just come together at the right moments. And they just look so comfortable that they're putting out the power, and it feels like they're soft pedaling. Yeah. That it's just coming so easy without a fight, and they can move through the peloton, and it's so graceful to watch. It's like watching the lead pack of runners in a marathon. When you see people at the highest level, in their comfort zones, run like just doing it as like a metronome. It's the most beautiful thing to see, and it happens few and far between. But when it does, then you have that just better connection, and magic can happen on days like that. And it happens in businesses frequently or infrequently. And nothing like this ever happens that frequently. I'm not so sure in flying, but when it does come together, it's a beautiful, sweet thing to experience.
Yeah, it is nice. Jordan wants to know, what tech are you testing out for the bikes in the prep for Tour de France this year? Anything special coming?
We wanted to launch a connected bike, which just brings everything together into all the strain gauges in a frame, and just the gearing and the pressure and all of that kind of stuff into a display unit on a connected bike. But sadly that's not going to happen this year at the Tour, and we wouldn't have been able to ride it anyway because there are certain restrictions. But ultimately we're still focusing on getting the right power down with the doing the work and looking at the altitude gains of the climbs, what power we need to push out to be successful. History, a lot of preparation work going on at the moment, and we want to bring the best team to the Tour de France. It's going to be super hard, super hilly. It's going to fight every single day. The yellow jersey will change many times in the first week because it's so competitive. And so we just want to make sure that we are up there. But the tech is not really any different from what we had a year ago. Okay.
Final question for you, and thank you for your time. What are your top tips in creating a high performance team?
Yeah, be honest, work hard, and focus on connecting with the people inside your organization, and set goals and achieve them. Those are the kind of things that are really, really important. And take leadership. I think leadership is critical, but have the same people with the same mindset around you. So the right mindset. Take leadership of every day and what you can control, and be positive.
That's great. Great words to end it off. Doug, I think we could even set up episode 3, maybe after the tour, end of the year, we can have a catch up again. Been wonderful chatting with you. Thank you for all the insight. It's been super to just see what goes on behind the scenes as well. All the best settling in there. And with the tour, 29th of August, we'll be tuned in. Good luck for the 140 odd race days in the year.
Thanks, Alex.
Take care. Well, thanks so much for joining. It's been a wonderful chat with Doug. I appreciate you guys joining. Please share, subscribe, like, and till next time, stay safe.